Sarai Jensen stood in the doorway of Desmond Alaric's penthouse, clutching her scarf with both hands, her breath tight and shallow. The city lights behind her blurred as her eyes welled with disbelief. "I'm late," she had whispered moments earlier, her voice trembling. Not by minutes, by weeks. Desmond didn't blink, didn't flinch. He simply leaned back against the kitchen island, jaw tight, eyes cast downward, arms folded like he was holding in a storm. She had expected surprise, maybe fear, even anger. What she got was worse. "I can't do this right now." That sentence didn't echo. It pierced. Sarai waited, thinking he'd follow up. Clarify. Say something that softened the blow. But he just stood there, handsome, composed, distant. The man who once ran his fingers down her spine while whispering about forever was now silent, frozen. "You can't," she whispered, the words catching like gravel in her throat. "Can't be a father, can't be here for me. I've got too much happening. The board's breathing down my neck. I'm about to launch a division that could tank or take off. This isn't the right time." Sarai couldn't believe she was hearing this from the same man who had once kissed her forehead while she slept and murmured that he wanted a future. The same man who made her feel safe, wrapped up in his world of pressed suits, black coffee, and quiet devotion. "You said timing didn't matter to you," she said. Desmond didn't answer. The silence burned more than anything else. She took a step back, eyes hardening. "I told you something that's about to change my life forever, and you can't even look at me." He looked up then, but not with softness. Just resignation. "You didn't ask what I wanted. You just dropped this on me. That was it." She let out a shaky breath and nodded. "Right." Grabbing her tote bag off the floor, Sarai walked toward the elevator, every step echoing through the quiet apartment. He didn't stop her. He didn't ask if she had a plan. He didn't ask how far along she was. He didn't ask if she was okay. The only sound that followed her was the soft ding of the elevator arriving, and the slow crumbling of everything she thought they were. It rained the entire drive back to Savannah. The wipers on her old Toyota Corolla squeaked with every pass. Her fingers clenched the steering wheel. She hadn't told her aunt yet, hadn't told anyone. The GPS voice echoed in the quiet. "Arriving at your destination." Sarai pulled into the gravel driveway of her aunt's house, an old one-story with peeling paint and a warm light in the window. Home. But not the home she thought she'd have. Her aunt, Clara, opened the door in a soft robe and wide scarf wrapped around her hair. She didn't ask questions. When Sarai fell into her arms and cried, she never had to. By morning, Sarai had taken the spare room behind the house. It was once a storage space, no real insulation, a rickety twin bed with mismatched sheets. But it was hers now. She unpacked her bag and found Desmond's cufflinks still at the bottom, stuck between a pen and her makeup pouch. She stared at it for a moment, then dropped it in the trash. She had a new life to build. 3 weeks later, Sarai stood at the front of a daycare class, singing the ABCs to a circle of toddlers. She had traded corporate ambition for finger paint and storybooks. For now, she had a degree in childhood development. That helped her get the assistant caregiver position quickly. It paid little, but it came with free snacks, quiet nap hours, and a sense of usefulness. The nausea started in the mornings. Then came the cravings, pickles and peanut butter, ice chips, crackers under her pillow. Her aunt drove her to appointments when she could. Sarai handled the rest. Each night she lay in her small bed, one hand on her belly, wondering if Desmond ever thought about her. He hadn't called. He hadn't texted. She never changed her number. But maybe that silence was her answer. The day she gave birth was warm and windless. Spring in Georgia. Micah arrived quietly. No loud cries, no fuss. He blinked up at her with wide hazel eyes, and a calm that wrapped around her heart like a ribbon. Her aunt cried harder than she did. The nurses kept commenting on how peaceful the baby was. Sarai didn't say a word about his father. Just filled the form, father. Not listed. It wasn't pettiness. It was self-preservation. If Desmond had wanted to be part of this, he would have made that clear. Micah grew quickly. By his first birthday, he was already walking. He loved books, especially the ones with animal sounds. He rarely cried, always watched first, acted later, just like his father. Sometimes Sarai would catch herself watching him sleep, that same sharp jawline, those lashes that curled upward, the little dimple on his right cheek. She wanted to hate Desmond for what he did, for not calling, for not fighting. But all she felt now was a quiet sadness, a sadness that came with understanding. He simply didn't know how to love the way she needed. So she did it alone, changed diapers alone, worked 2 jobs alone, taught Micah how to say please and thank you alone. He'd never know he was missing anything, because she'd never make him feel like he was. When Micah turned 3, Sarai started tutoring high school students in the evenings to make extra cash. Her days were filled with toddlers. Her nights were algebra and essays. Her phone stayed silent. No unknown numbers. No missed calls from blocked IDs. She sometimes wondered if Desmond ever thought about the possibility. If he ever looked at a child on the street and wondered, "Is that mine?" She doubted it. Men like him didn't look back. They built empires, not families. One Saturday afternoon, Sarai took Micah to the park. He wore a little red hoodie and blue jeans. She brought snacks and a worn-out stroller that leaned a little to the left. While Micah played with chalk on the sidewalk, Sarai watched from a bench, sipping lukewarm coffee. An older woman sat beside her. "Yours?" she asked, pointing at Micah. Sarai nodded. "He's sweet." "Thank you." The woman smiled. "You're doing good. You're raising a kind boy. I can see it in how he moves." Sarai blinked back tears she didn't expect. That night, as she tucked Micah into bed, he whispered, "Mama, I love you." She kissed his forehead. "I love you too, baby." And for the first time in months, she believed she might be okay. Even if Desmond never showed up again. Even if no one else ever knew what it cost her to walk away from him. Micah was enough. The following Monday started like any other. Sarai rose before sunrise, pulled her hair into a bun, and quietly slipped out of bed so she wouldn't wake Micah. She moved around the house like second nature, heating water for tea, folding laundry from the dryer, packing. Micah's backpack with an extra sweater and 2 bananas he'd later trade for someone else's cookies. It was a rhythm now, a life built from duty, love, and quiet grace. Aunt Clara watched her from the kitchen table, newspaper in hand, glasses sliding down her nose. "You don't sleep much anymore," Clara murmured, not looking up. Sarai smiled faintly. "Sleep costs time. And time costs health," Clara replied. "You're not a machine, Sarai." "I know," she whispered, pouring herself a cup. They didn't say much after that. They didn't have to. The weight of single motherhood didn't rest on Sarai's shoulders. It pressed into her bones. But she carried it with purpose, not bitterness. That's what Clara admired most. By mid-morning, Sarai stood in front of a line of toddlers, helping them press painted handprints onto construction paper. Micah sat in the corner with a puzzle, tongue poked out in concentration. He didn't cry when she dropped him off anymore, but he always ran to her when someone else's parent arrived. He never asked, never begged for answers, but the quiet in his eyes said enough. At lunch, one of the other caregivers leaned over. "Micah's so gentle," she said. "You're raising a boy with a sweet spirit." Sarai nodded. "I hope so." She wanted her son to be kind, but not small, gentle, but not breakable. Later that week, a parent from the daycare, Mrs. Banks, approached Sarai after pickup. "You tutor, right?" "Yes, I do," Sarai replied, wiping glitter off her apron. "My son's in 9th grade, struggling with algebra. He needs someone consistent." Sarai hesitated. Her nights were already full. But money was tight. 3 days a week, Mrs. Banks offered. $50 a session. Sarai's eyes widened. "Yes, I can do that." That's how it started. 1 student, turned into 3, 3 into 5. By month's end, Sarai had tutoring sessions booked every evening except Sundays. She cooked dinner during Micah's nap time, packed lesson plans in his lunch bag, and studied grant applications for online certification programs after he went to bed. She was exhausted, but not complaining. She had purpose. She had Micah. Some nights, though, the silence in her room felt like judgment. She'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what Desmond was doing at that exact moment. Did he ever think about her? Did he even remember? Or had she been just another phase in his fast, high-powered life? When she was still pregnant, Sarai thought about sending him an ultrasound, thought about mailing him a letter, but each time she stopped. If he didn't fight to ask, why should she fight to tell? Micah wasn't a trap. He wasn't leverage. He wasn't a secret meant for revenge. He was a child, and Sarai was determined to raise him with dignity. Micah loved bedtime stories, but not the usual ones. He didn't care about dragons or dinosaurs. He wanted real-life tales, stories about when Sarai was a little girl, or how she made her own costume from cereal boxes in the 4th grade, or how Aunt Clara once baked a pie that exploded in the oven. He listened with wide eyes and belly laughs. Sarai learned to weave lessons into her stories: kindness, patience, honesty. And sometimes, late at night, when Micah was halfway asleep, he'd murmur, "You're my best friend, Mama." She'd smile into the dark. "You're mine too, baby." At Micah's 4th birthday party, Clara invited some neighbors. They decorated the backyard with paper lanterns and streamers Micah helped cut out himself. He wore a gold crown made from craft paper and proudly showed off his cake smile to anyone with a phone. One of Clara's church friends pulled Sarai aside. "Where's his father?" she asked. Sarai paused. "Not in the picture." The woman frowned. "A shame. Boys need fathers." Sarai didn't respond. She didn't need to justify her son's joy to anyone. Micah had laughter in his lungs and stability in his bones. He was not missing anything. After the guests left and Micah was asleep, Sarai sat on the porch steps, a worn blanket around her shoulders. Aunt Clara joined her, holding 2 mugs of tea. "You okay?" "I'm good," Sarai replied. Clara studied her. "You miss him?" Sarai didn't ask who. "Some days," she admitted, "but not like before. Not because I want him back. Because you wish he'd been better," Clara said quietly. Sarai looked down. "Yes." Clara sipped her tea. "That's the hardest part. Grieving who someone should have been." Months passed. Micah started drawing family portraits, stick figures with curly hair and matching smiles. Always 2 people, him and Sarai. Sometimes she wondered if that would always be enough. But she never asked him to draw anyone else. She never told him who was missing. She simply loved him harder. Then, one day, a phone call changed the pace of everything. "Hey, girl," said her friend Lisette. "Remember that conference in Atlanta, Early Childhood Education and Brain Development? I submitted your name as a speaker, and they picked you." Sarai's eyes widened. "You what?" "You have 2 months to prepare. They'll cover your hotel. You just have to show up and share your story." Sarai's heart raced. The city she ran from. The city he lived in. She almost said no. Almost. But Micah walked in just then with a book in hand and hope in his voice. "Read me this one, Mama." She took the book, pulled him into her lap, and kissed his curls. And in that moment, she knew. If she was going to keep growing, she'd have to stop hiding. She packed light for the trip. Just 2 suitcases, one for her and one for Micah. He was excited about staying in a hotel, kept asking if he'd get his own bed. The morning they left, Aunt Clara hugged them tightly. "You go speak your truth," she said. Sarai smiled. "I'm not going to stir trouble." Clara grinned. "Sometimes truth stirs things whether you mean to or not." By the time they reached the hotel in Atlanta, Sarai's nerves were unraveling. The lobby was sleek and modern, marble floors gleaming under warm lights. She checked in, keeping her head down, pulling Micah close. Everything felt too polished, too loud, too much like Desmond. She pushed the thought away. They took the elevator to their floor. As they stepped off, Micah darted a few feet ahead. "Slow down, baby." And that's when it happened. He bumped into a man stepping out of another elevator. Impeccably dressed, Desmond Alaric. The air vanished. Time thinned. Sarai froze. He hadn't changed. Still sharp in a tailored jacket, still walking like he owned the ground beneath his feet. But his eyes locked on Micah, wide and startled, and then on her. "Sarai?" he asked, voice low. Before she could think, the woman beside him curled her arm through his. "Is everything okay?" Sarai gathered herself quickly, placed a hand on Micah's shoulder, and stepped back. "Yes, sorry, we were just leaving." Her voice was calm. Her hands weren't. She didn't wait for a reply. She turned and walked away. What do you do when the person you love chooses silence over support? Have you ever had to walk away from someone? Not because you stopped loving them, but because you had to protect yourself. Have you ever rebuilt your world with no one clapping for you? Sarai didn't ask for pity. She asked for peace. And she built it with her own hands. Millions of single parents face that same fight every day, often with no safety net. If this part of her journey moved you, drop A in the comments. Share your story or shout out someone who raised a child with quiet strength. And if you believe Sarai deserves to be seen and heard, like, comment, and subscribe. Because stories like this are happening in real life, and they deserve to be told. The hotel ballroom buzzed with quiet energy. Round tables filled with early childhood educators, child psychologists, non-profit leaders, and a few policymakers made up the audience. A soft voice hummed over the speakers, announcing the next speaker. Her name, Sarai Jensen, assistant caregiver and early learning advocate from Savannah, Georgia. Applause followed, light but warm. Sarai took the stage slowly. Her palms were damp, her breath shallow. Her heels clicked against the polished floor, but her thoughts screamed louder than her steps. He might be here. Desmond. She didn't know for sure. But she felt it in her bones. That same tension she used to feel when he walked into a room, like the air shifted to make room for him. But she couldn't think about that now. She reached the podium, adjusted the mic, exhaled, and began. "I wasn't supposed to be here," she said, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. "Not just in this conference, I mean in this field. I had plans, corporate plans, policy dreams, big city ambitions, until I had a child." The crowd leaned in. Motherhood rerouted me. Not because I lost my drive, but because I found something deeper. Something that changed how I understood early development, attachment, and emotional safety. She paused. Her hands stopped shaking. My son was born in the spring. On a quiet morning in a small clinic with peeling paint and a cracked waiting bench. There was no photographer, no partner cutting the cord, just a nurse with kind eyes and a tired aunt holding my hand. Soft murmurs in the crowd. Micah didn't cry loudly. He blinked, stared, like he was taking it all in before choosing who to trust. Sarai looked out across the audience and let the silence land before continuing. Raising a child alone was never the plan, but it taught me more about early childhood than any textbook or classroom ever could. It taught me that children don't need perfect homes. They need consistent love, safe eyes, gentle hands. More heads nodded now. Pens paused mid-sentence. We often focus on milestones, sitting up, first steps, first words. But what about the unmeasurables? The child who learns they can cry without being punished. The one who learns that silence doesn't always mean rejection. She steadied her breath. My son taught me that resilience doesn't begin in adulthood. It begins in infancy, when their needs are met with patience, not punishment. The room was quiet now, completely. I speak today not as an expert, not yet, but as a mother, a worker, a woman who chose to show up every day for her child, even when she had nothing else to give. A slow wave of applause broke. Sarai stepped back from the mic, smiled once briefly, and exited the stage. She didn't look around. She didn't want to know if he had come. Not yet. Backstage, Sarai sat alone for a few minutes before heading up to her room. The hotel corridors felt colder now. Her nerves had shifted from performance to paranoia. She unlocked her door. Micah sat cross-legged on the floor, coloring. "Hey, baby," she said softly, kneeling beside him. He looked up. "Did you talk to all the people?" "I did, and I didn't fall down once." Micah grinned. "That's good." She brushed a crumb from his cheek and kissed his forehead. "How about we go get some chicken nuggets?" Micah gasped. "With fries?" "Only if you promise not to tell Aunt Clara." "I pinky promise." She smiled, pulled him into a hug, and held him a little longer than usual. Because in the back of her mind, she knew today wasn't over. While Micah nibbled on his fries in the lobby cafe, Sarai glanced toward the elevators. She tried to convince herself she was being paranoid. But then she saw him. Desmond, alone. He wasn't walking this time. He was standing still, phone in hand, unreadable expression on his face, eyes flicking toward the cafe. Their eyes met. 5 years apart collapsed in 1 second. He didn't move. Neither did she. But her pulse sprinted. Micah didn't notice. He was too busy asking for ketchup. Sarai looked away first. She grabbed the takeout bag, scooped Micah into her arms, and exited through the side door without another glance. That night, she put Micah to bed early. He hummed to himself as she tucked in the sheets, completely unaware of how close his life was to changing. She stared at him longer than usual, watching his chest rise and fall, watching those hazel eyes drift shut. She had tried to avoid this moment for 5 years. But Atlanta made that impossible now. Desmond stood at the bar, turning his whiskey glass in his hand. He hadn't slept the night before, not after seeing the boy, the eyes, the walk, the way he clung to Sarai like she was the only world he knew. He felt sick. He had read the report his assistant pulled. Sarai Jensen, single mother, no listed father, relocated to Savannah shortly after her master's program. No signs of public relationships since. The math was clear, but part of him didn't want to believe it. Not because he thought she'd lie, but because the guilt would wreck him. He had pushed her away. She had told him she was late. He remembered that night, remembered freezing, saying something selfish and cruel. "I can't do this right now." What an arrogant, cowardly thing to say. The next morning, he waited outside the conference room. He knew she was scheduled to speak again in a round-table session. He didn't approach her when she arrived. He waited until she stepped out. "Sarai." She stopped, turned slowly. He stood there. Not the powerful tech CEO now, but the man she once knew. The man who made her tea at 2 a.m. The man who had walked her home in the rain. His voice dropped. "Is he mine?" Her eyes didn't waver. "You don't get to ask that now." "I need to know." "You needed to care then," she replied, her voice low and sharp. Desmond swallowed hard. "I didn't know." "You did. I told you I was late. You disappeared." That silence was an answer. He looked away. Sarai stepped closer, not angrily, but firmly. "Yes, Desmond, he's yours. He has your eyes, your hands, your temper when he loses a puzzle piece." He exhaled slowly, shame rising in his chest. "I wasn't ready," he admitted. She nodded once. "I was." He nodded too. And then she walked away. Sarai sat at the small round table in her hotel room, the conference badge still looped around her neck. Micah was napping in the bed beside her, one sock halfway off, mouth slightly open. He looked so peaceful, too peaceful for what the world outside that room was beginning to stir up. Her fingers tapped the edge of her teacup. Desmond knew now. He had asked her directly, "Is he mine?" And she had told him the truth. The answer hung in the air like a siren neither of them could ignore anymore. But what came next? That was the part Sarai didn't know how to face. Back in his own suite, Desmond stood at the window, looking out at the Atlanta skyline. His reflection stared back at him in the glass, tired, tight-jawed, and nothing like the man who had built Alaric Tech with ruthless focus. That man had sacrificed everything for success. Friendships, sleep, love. Now, he was a stranger to a child who had his blood. Desmond didn't know what scared him more, the fact that he had missed 4 birthdays, or the fact that he hadn't even known to miss them. He poured himself a glass of water and sat on the edge of the bed. He didn't deserve to be called a father. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But he owed that boy something. And he owed Sarai even more. The next morning, Sarai stood at the front of the conference hall, preparing for her breakout session. It was a workshop on emotional safety and classroom trust, something she had lived and taught for years now. As the room filled with attendees, she glanced toward the back. He was there, alone again. She didn't acknowledge him. She didn't flinch, but her voice cracked ever so slightly on the second slide. After the session, she packed her materials quickly. She didn't want another confrontation in a hallway. But Desmond waited outside. He didn't speak right away, just walked beside her as she moved down the corridor. "I'm not going to make this harder for you," he said. Sarai stopped. "Then what are you doing?" "I want to do something. I don't know what yet, but I can't walk away from him." "You did before." "I know. That's on me." Her expression didn't soften. "What do you want, Desmond?" He paused. "I want to meet him properly, when you're ready." Her guard was still high, but she didn't say no. Later that evening, Sarai sat on the floor of her room with Micah, building a block tower. He was full of questions today, about elevators, about clouds, about why ketchup wasn't a vegetable. She watched him closely, every laugh, every curious glance. How do you explain a father to a child who never had one? Do you start with his absence? Do you begin with his name? Or do you just wait? Micah turned to her suddenly. "Mama, who was that man you talked to in the hallway?" Sarai froze. "Which one?" "The tall one. The one who looked at me but didn't say hi." She hesitated. "He's someone I used to know." Micah squinted. "Like a friend?" She smiled faintly. "A long time ago, yes." He shrugged and went back to building. But the seed was planted. Desmond spent the next 2 days sitting in on other panels, helping his assistant manage business, calls in the quiet corners of the hotel, and watching Sarai from a respectful distance. He wasn't trying to force anything. He was trying to learn, trying to figure out how the boy in the red hoodie, the one who scribbled with crayons and asked for extra napkins, had come from him. It didn't make sense on paper, but it made perfect sense in his chest. The first time he saw the boy smile, something in him shifted. Micah had Sarai's softness and his own stare. There was no denying it. And now Desmond had a choice. He could go back to pretending the past was a closed book, or he could step into the life he never showed up for, not as a rescuer, not as a replacement, but as a man who wanted to do the right thing. On the final day of the conference, Sarai received an email from the committee thanking her for her contribution. Attached were photos, one of her speaking, another of her and Micah walking into the main hall hand in hand. In the background of that second photo, Desmond stood watching them. Sarai stared at the image for a long time. She closed the laptop and sat back, hands in her lap. What did she owe him? What did Micah deserve? The flight home was quiet. Micah fell asleep on her shoulder before takeoff. Sarai gazed out the window at the clouds. She still hadn't decided. Would she let Desmond meet him? Would she allow that door to open again? Clara picked them up from the airport. "How was it?" she asked, adjusting the rearview mirror. "Good. Hard, but good," Sarai answered softly. Clara glanced at her. "You saw him?" "I did." Clara didn't ask what he said, didn't ask how she felt. She just nodded. "Micah's still young," Clara said, "but he's smart. Don't lie to him when the time comes." "I won't," Sarai replied. That night, Sarai opened her laptop and drafted an email. It was short. "Desmond, I'm not making promises. I'm not giving access, but I will allow one visit, supervised, brief, if Micah agrees. He doesn't know who you are yet. I'll keep it that way for now. Sarai. She stared at the send button for several minutes before clicking it. 5 years of silence. Now, the next 5 minutes felt like a lifetime. But Desmond's reply came just an hour later. Thank you. I'll respect your boundaries. I only ask for a chance to be around him. Even if he doesn't know who I am yet, I just want to start showing up. Sarai closed her laptop. Then she walked into Micah's room, kissed his cheek and whispered, "You're so loved, baby. Always have been." Micah rolled over, mumbling something about ketchup. She laughed quietly, heart both heavier and lighter. This was only the beginning. The community center was quiet that Saturday morning. Sarai arrived early with Micah, holding his small hand as they entered the art room. The room smelled of crayons and washable paint. A stack of clean drawing sheets sat on each table. The walls were lined with children's artwork, stick figures, rainbows, rockets, and crooked smiles. Micah ran straight to the coloring station. Sarai set her purse down on a nearby chair and scanned the room. She told Desmond to come at 10. He arrived at 10 on the dot. Dressed down in a black sweater and jeans, no entourage, no phone in hand. Just him. He paused in the doorway, waiting for Sarai's approval to come in. She gave a small nod. Desmond walked in slowly, as if he were entering something sacred. Micah didn't look up. Not yet. Sarai sat across the table from Desmond, while Micah colored in a turtle with green and blue crayons. Every so often, he glanced up, checking the stranger out with quiet curiosity. Desmond didn't force a smile. Didn't try to win the room. He simply sat. Sarai broke the silence first. "Micah, this is Mr. Des. He wanted to see the artwork you've been doing." Micah tilted his head. "You know how to color?" Desmond smiled gently. "Not as good as you. But I used to. Do you stay in the lines?" "Sometimes," he answered. "Sometimes I don't." Micah studied him like a little detective. "That's okay. Mama says it's okay to go outside the lines if you have a good reason." "Your mama's right." Micah handed him a yellow crayon. "You can do this page." Desmond blinked slowly, caught off guard. "Thank you." Sarai watched quietly, heart thumping. She didn't expect Micah to warm up this quickly, but Desmond wasn't pushing. He was present, and that mattered. Over the next hour, Desmond sat with Micah and colored 3 sheets. One was a rocket ship, which Micah insisted had to be red because red ones go faster. The second was a lion. The third was a picture of a house with clouds and a sun. Desmond hesitated at the house. His fingers froze at the sight of it. Micah noticed. "You don't like houses?" Desmond shook his head softly. "No, I do. I just haven't drawn one in a long time." Micah pointed at the drawing. "That's me and Mama on the porch." Desmond smiled. "It's a beautiful porch." Sarai's throat tightened. She looked away. When the session ended, Micah ran outside with one of the staff helpers to look at the bird feeder. Sarai started packing up the crayons, but Desmond spoke first. "He's brilliant. He's observant," Sarai said quietly. "And kind. I saw that." She zipped the bag shut and stood. "Today went well." Desmond nodded. "Thank you for letting me come. I only agreed to this for Micah. Not for you." "I know. He still doesn't know who you are. I won't say a word unless you allow it." Sarai looked at him, really looked at him. He's the one who'll need to decide when he's ready, not us. Back at home, Micah plopped onto the couch with his coloring sheets, humming to himself. Aunt Clara peeked from the kitchen. "How'd it go?" Sarai shrugged. "Surprisingly calm." "Did he talk much?" "Not really." "Did Micah like him?" Sarai nodded. "He asked if Mr. Des could come to the fair next weekend." Clara arched a brow. "That fast, huh?" He didn't know why. He just liked his company. Clara stirred the pot on the stove. Children know peace. They feel it faster than adults. That night, after bath time, Micah crawled into bed and stared at the ceiling. Mama, yes, baby. Where do daddies go when they're not in your house? Sarai's breath caught. She sat on the edge of the bed, brushing his curls back gently. Sometimes, daddies live in different cities. Sometimes they don't live with their kids. But that doesn't mean they don't care. Micah thought for a second. Was Mr. Des your friend before? Sarai paused. A long time ago. Do you think he draws with other kids too? No, she said honestly. I think today was special. Micah nodded, half asleep now. I liked his voice. Sarai kissed his cheek. I did too. Once. Desmond didn't sleep much that night. He sat on his balcony, thinking about Micah's hands. The way he gripped crayons. The way he didn't flinch when Desmond sat beside him. There was something about the boy's calm that reminded him of Sarai. That same strength wrapped in gentleness. He thought about calling his mother. But what would he say? She didn't even know about Sarai, let alone Micah. He picked up his phone and texted Sarai instead. Thank you again. I'd like to come to the fair, but only if he asks again. No pressure. Just, thank you for today. He hit send and waited. Sarai's reply came 20 minutes later. He already asked. The fair is at 1 p.m. next Saturday. Be early. He doesn't like waiting. The next morning, Sarai found Micah drawing at the kitchen table before breakfast. He was making another house. 2 people on the porch again. But this time, a third figure stood in the yard. Smaller, a little taller than Micah's drawing. Still faceless, still unnamed, but there. Sarai didn't ask. She just made him pancakes. The Saturday sun was kinder than usual, filtering through the trees in soft golden streaks. The annual community fair buzzed with life. Food trucks parked on the edges, booths set up with handmade crafts, local musicians playing acoustic covers under a tent, and kids everywhere with painted faces and sticky fingers. Micah tugged at the hem of his t-shirt, his face painted like a lion. Do you think Mr. Des likes popcorn? Sarai knelt beside him, tightening his shoelaces. I think he might. Micah grinned. Good. I'm going to get him the extra salty one. Desmond had been on her mind all morning, though she hadn't said much to Clara or anyone else. She wasn't sure how this would go. There was no script for this situation. No parenting book had prepared her for what it meant to let a man into their life who didn't start the journey, but now wanted to join it. She wore a loose denim shirt, her hair pulled back into a clean, simple bun. She looked calm. She didn't feel calm. Micah spotted Desmond before she did. There! He shouted, pointing toward the parking lot. Desmond walked toward them, casual but neat. A dark green polo, jeans, sunglasses tucked into the collar. No fanfare. Just a quiet, steady presence. Micah ran toward him with the kind of bold joy that only a child could carry. Desmond knelt to his level. I got you popcorn, Micah announced proudly, thrusting the bag forward. Desmond took it gently. Extra salty? Micah beamed. Yes. Sarai watched them from a short distance, arms folded. She didn't intervene. She didn't interrupt. For once, she let it happen. Let them connect. They walked the fairgrounds together. Desmond stayed beside Micah's side the whole time, letting him choose which games to try, standing in line for the inflatable slide, even agreeing to get his face painted. Are you sure? The teenage face-painting volunteer asked. Desmond smiled. Micah says I need a lion too. Micah clapped. Matching. Sarai chuckled under her breath from the shade of a nearby tree. Desmond sat still while the teenager painted a golden mane and little black whiskers on his cheeks. When it was done, Micah burst out laughing. You look silly. I feel powerful. You look like a cartoon. I'll take it. They walked toward the mini petting zoo next. Micah fed a goat and giggled as it licked his palm. Desmond crouched beside him. You ever pet a llama? Nope. Me neither. Micah took his hand. Let's do it together. That moment, that little hand reaching for his, made Desmond's throat tighten. Not because he had earned it, but because he hadn't, and the boy still offered it freely. Sarai stood near the lemonade stand, sipping slowly. She didn't speak much, but she didn't leave either. She watched Desmond crouch beside Micah, watched him wipe ice cream off the boy's nose with his napkin, watched him carry Micah on his shoulders through the crowded row of booths without a single complaint. It wasn't performative. It wasn't flashy. It was natural, and that terrified her more than anything, because if he was faking, it would be easier to dismiss. But he wasn't. They sat under a large oak tree later that afternoon. Micah was asleep in Sarai's lap, his face still half-painted, his fingers curled around a plastic toy truck from the prize booth. Desmond sat a few feet away, sipping a bottle of water, his shirt smudged with face paint and grass. He finally spoke. "Today was the best day I've had in a long time." Sarai nodded, gently brushing Micah's curls from his forehead. "He had fun. He trusts easily." "No, he doesn't," she said softly. "He just knows when someone's safe." Desmond looked at her. "Thank you for trusting me with him. Even a little." Sarai looked back at him, tired but honest. "I didn't do it for you. I know." She hesitated. "You didn't try to explain or defend yourself." "I don't have a defense." He swallowed. "I was selfish. I was scared. I thought I had time to figure things out. Business, emotions, my own baggage. I didn't realize I'd lost something until it was gone." Sarai looked away. "You lost more than something, Desmond. You lost someone." He nodded slowly. "I'm trying to accept that." They sat in silence a moment longer. Then Sarai said, "I don't know what comes next. I'm not promising anything." "I'm not asking for promises," Desmond replied. "I'm just asking to keep showing up." She looked at him, really looked, and said nothing. But she didn't say no either. Back home, after the fair, Sarai gave Micah a warm bath to scrub off the paint. He was sleepy but still humming the song from the puppet show. "Mr. Des is funny," he mumbled as she towel-dried his curls. "Yeah?" He didn't even get mad when the goat sneezed on him. Sarai laughed. "That's because he's brave." Micah blinked. "Do you like him?" She paused. "I'm learning to understand him again." Micah looked thoughtful. "He can come next time, right?" "We'll see." Micah smiled, content with that. He didn't need more, just consistency. Desmond sat alone in his car outside the community center that night. The parking lot was empty now. He hadn't gone home right away. He'd sat for almost an hour thinking. He didn't expect a second chance, but he'd show up for 100 first steps if that's what it took. He pulled out his phone and opened his calendar. He blocked every Saturday from now through the end of the year. "Micah," he whispered to himself, letting the name settle fully for the first time. "My son." Tuesday evening at the Community Resource Center smelled like fresh paint and old carpet. A small sign taped to the glass door read, "Fathers in Focus, Building Connection Through Presence Weekly Parenting Support Group." 6 p.m. Desmond stood just outside the door, hands in his pockets, staring at the sign like it might suddenly give him permission to turn around. He wasn't a joiner, not one for circles of chairs and paper name tags, not one for group chats about feelings. But here he was, in jeans and a plain t-shirt, no security, no staff, just a man who had missed 5 years and couldn't afford to keep missing more. He walked in. The room was modest. 10 chairs in a circle, a whiteboard with smudged writing from earlier in the day, a table with coffee, 2 boxes of pizza, and a tub of crayons, clearly left from the earlier toddler class. The facilitator, a soft-spoken man named DeRay, welcomed him with a handshake and a nod. "You're new," DeRay said. Desmond nodded. "Yeah. Name's Desmond." "First time, Dad?" He hesitated. "First time. Showing up." DeRay held his gaze. "Good place to start." Meanwhile, Sarai was washing dishes at home while Micah lay on the floor drawing another house. This one, had 3 stick figures. She didn't ask about the third. Not yet. Clara sat at the table, peeling sweet potatoes. He said he's going to the workshop tonight. He did, Sarai replied. You believe him? I do. Clara raised an eyebrow. That's new. I'm not sure what this is, Sarai admitted. But I told him showing up would matter more than saying the right thing, so... I'm watching. Clara smiled. Let the man earn his place. Back at the center, the session had begun. The men went around introducing themselves. A truck driver, a chef, a UPS worker, an ex-con who just got custody of his daughter back, a quiet guy who only spoke when his voice cracked, and then Desmond. I'm Desmond, he said simply. I'm new to all of this. I didn't know I had a son until recently. He's 5. I missed a lot, more than I'll ever get back, but I want to be in his life now. I don't expect a reset. I just want to do better forward. Heads nodded. No applause. No judgment. DeRay spoke up. Fatherhood isn't about perfection. It's about presence, showing up, staying even when it's uncomfortable. Desmond listened, and for once, he didn't speak with authority. He just absorbed. At the end of the session, DeRay passed out a sheet. This week's focus: listening without correcting, responding without defensiveness. Be present, not perfect. Desmond folded the paper into his wallet and headed to his car. He didn't call Sarai. He didn't text. He knew this wasn't about showing her he was trying. This was about trying, even if no one saw. On Friday, Sarai opened the mailbox and found a letter addressed to Micah. There was no return address, just a small sticker on the envelope with a rocket ship. She opened it. Inside was a sheet of paper with a simple message, written in big block letters. Hey Micah, I had fun at the fair. I'm practicing my drawing so I can keep up with you. Here's one I made. Let me know what you think. Your friend, Mr. Des. Attached was a sketch of a house with a little boy on the porch and a taller lion standing in the yard. Both of them were smiling. Sarai showed it to Micah that evening. His face lit up. He made this? Yes. Micah carried it to the fridge and asked for a magnet. That was all. No explanation, no heavy talk. Just a child proud of being seen. The next Saturday, Desmond returned. This time, Micah didn't wait for Sarai to say anything. He ran to him, arms wide. Desmond crouched low and scooped him up with a laugh. Whoa. You've gotten taller in 1 week. Micah giggled. I ate a big sandwich yesterday. Ah, the sandwich effect. Sarai stood back, arms folded, watching them like a quietly ticking clock. They spent the afternoon walking by the river trail. Desmond brought snacks, a soccer ball, and 2 foldable chairs. Micah played in the grass, while Sarai and Desmond sat side by side. Close, but not touching. I've been going to the workshop, he said, eyes forward. I know, she replied. DeRay told me you've been quiet, but consistent. I'm learning. Sarai didn't smile, but her shoulders eased. Micah kept your picture on the fridge. He shows it to everyone. Desmond's jaw flexed. That means a lot. They sat in silence for a while, the sounds of birds and wind and a boy's laughter filling the space. Then Sarai said, If he ever calls you anything other than Mr. Des, let him choose it. Don't ask, don't hint, just earn it. Desmond nodded. I understand. She finally looked at him. For the first time in years, she didn't see the man who left. She saw the man trying to return the right way. By the second hour at the river park, the sun began to dip low, casting long shadows across the field. Micah was still kicking his soccer ball in lazy circles, his energy slowly draining but his joy still bubbling. Sarai sat on the bench, sipping from her water bottle, legs crossed at the ankle. Desmond stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, watching Micah with a softness Sarai hadn't seen in him before. It wasn't admiration, it was reverence, like he understood the weight of the moment and how easy it would be to fumble it. Micah ran back over, breathless. I'm thirsty. Desmond immediately offered his own bottle. Here, It's cold. Micah took it, then paused. Did you bring snacks like last time? I brought something better, Desmond said, pulling out a folded napkin from his backpack. Inside was a peanut butter and banana sandwich, cut into little triangles. Micah's face lit up, like Mama makes. Desmond gave a small smile. I asked her how. Micah sat down right beside him, legs swinging as he took a bite. Sarai leaned back slightly, watching from the bench. She didn't say a word, didn't need to. For the first time, it felt natural. No tension, no tightrope between past and present. Just a boy, a sandwich, and a man learning what it meant to stay. An hour later, Sarai called out, "Micah, time to go." Micah groaned, wiping crumbs from his mouth. "Can Mr. Des come back tomorrow?" Desmond smiled gently. "I've got work tomorrow, buddy, but maybe next weekend." Micah nodded. "Okay, bring triangle sandwiches again." Desmond held out his hand for a high five. "Deal." Micah slapped it with sticky fingers and ran off toward the car. Sarai didn't move immediately. She looked at Desmond. Her voice was low but firm. "You handled today well." Desmond shrugged lightly. "I'm learning to listen more than fix." "Good." She turned to go, then paused. "And for what it's worth, I liked the triangle sandwiches too." Desmond blinked, but before he could say anything, she was already walking away. That night, Desmond sat at his kitchen table alone. No TV, no music, just the dim hum of the refrigerator and the echo of Micah's voice in his mind. Can Mr. Des come back tomorrow? He hadn't expected it to feel like this. He had braced himself for resentment, for awkwardness, for Sarai to slam every door. Instead, what he found was space, narrow, yes, but open, just wide enough to step through if he stayed humble. He opened his laptop and emailed D. Ray. "Joined the workshop last week. Coming again Tuesday. Also, any materials you recommend for dads starting late? Books, podcasts, anything. I'm not trying to catch up in a rush, just trying not to get left behind again." Back in Savannah, Sarai tucked Micah into bed. He looked up at her with wide, thoughtful eyes. "Mama." "Yes, baby." "Why didn't you tell me Mr. Des was your friend before?" Sarai brushed his hair back. "Because I wanted you to know him for yourself first, not through my eyes." Micah blinked slowly. "He's nice." "I think so too." He was quiet for a moment, then whispered, "Was he sad when I was a baby and he wasn't there?" That question hit her like a punch to the chest. She took a deep breath. "I think he didn't understand how important being there was, but now that he does, I think he feels sad every day he missed." Micah nodded, processing that in the way only kids could. "Okay," he whispered. Sarai kissed his forehead. "Sleep, lion cub." And he did. Tuesday came faster than expected. Desmond showed up for the workshop early this time. He brought 2 boxes of donuts, one for the group and one just for D. Ray, marked thanks for making space. D. Ray raised an eyebrow but didn't smile. "We don't reward attendance with sugar, man." Desmond grinned. "Then consider it a bribe for patience." The men laughed. This time, Desmond didn't sit in the back. He sat in the middle. Spoke up once, then twice. Shared how hard it was not knowing what to say when Micah asked questions. "How do you tell a child you weren't ready to be a father?" he asked. "And should they even hear that from you, or from the person who showed up when you didn't?" One of the men nodded slowly. "You don't tell kids you weren't ready. You show them that now you are." Another added, "You don't explain your absence. You fill your presence." Desmond wrote that down. Every word. Back home that week, he mailed Micah another drawing. This one showed the same house as before, but now the porch had 2 rocking chairs, and the lion wasn't in the yard anymore. He was sitting next to the boy, both of them holding sandwiches. Sarai didn't react when she opened it. She just handed it to Micah and quietly turned to hide her face. On Saturday they met again, this time at the local library's story hour. Micah loved books with silly voices, and Desmond offered to read one with him. Sarai wasn't sure how that would go. But when Micah laughed at Desmond's grumpy bear voice, clutching his ribs and gasping between giggles, she didn't stop him. She laughed too. It wasn't easy. It wasn't perfect. But it was happening. At the end of the reading hour, while Micah colored a new bookmark, Desmond turned to Sarai. "Next week, I'd like to bring my mother." Sarai's expression didn't change. "She knows now?" she asked. "She does. And?" She was shocked. "Hurt I hadn't told her about you, about Micah. But she wants to meet him, with your permission." Sarai paused. "I'll think about it. That's all I ask." That night, Desmond lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Micah's laughter played in his head again and again. So did Sarai's pause. She was warming. Not forgiving, but warming. He could live with that. The morning breeze swept softly through Sarai's kitchen as she stood at the stove, flipping pancakes. Micah sat at the table, legs swinging beneath his chair, coloring in a picture of a giraffe with his favorite orange crayon. Music played faintly from the old radio, gospel smooth and steady, a sound she often turned to when her thoughts felt heavier than usual. And today, they did. Desmond wanted to bring his mother. She hadn't given him an answer yet. Sarai poured syrup over Micah's plate and set it in front of him. "Eat slow, baby. It's hot." Micah beamed. "Looks like ears." Sarai gave him a distracted smile and sat across from him, rubbing a knot out of her wrist. She remembered Desmond's mother, Ruth Alaric. Not well, but enough. Cold elegance. Polished to perfection. Always controlled. Always quiet. A woman with expectations that filled a room before she even entered it. Sarai had met her once, briefly, during her final semester at Emory, when Desmond had taken her to a networking dinner. Ruth hadn't said anything cruel, but she didn't need to. She looked at Sarai the same way Desmond used to look at unpaid invoices. Politely, but with impatience. Sarai hadn't thought about that moment in years. Until now. Later that afternoon, while Micah was napping, Desmond called. She debated answering, but she picked up. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey, you okay?" "I'm fine. You've been quiet." Sarai didn't respond right away. "Then your mother, I don't know if that's something Micah is ready for." "I understand," Desmond replied calmly. "I wanted to mention it in person, but I figured you'd need time. She wasn't very warm to me back then, Desmond." "I know." Sarai exhaled. "If this is going to happen, it has to be on my terms." "Of course. She doesn't get to come in and play grandma for the camera. No performances, no correcting how I raised him." "She won't," he said. "I already had that talk with her." Sarai raised an eyebrow, despite herself. "You did?" She didn't take it well, but she listened. And she agreed. Silence hung for a moment. Sarai finally said, "1 hour, public place, no introductions yet, just a friendly woman meeting a boy at the park. That's all he needs to know." "Understood." Sunday afternoon, the three of them arrived at Winslow Park. Sarai kept Micah close as they walked across the field toward the shaded area by the playground. Desmond's mother was already there, seated on a bench in a grey skirt suit and ballet flats. Her hair was pinned neatly, her posture perfect. She clutched a small bag on her lap. Sarai tensed, instinctively pulling Micah's hand tighter. "Who's that lady?" Micah asked. "Just a friend of Mr. Dez's," Sarai replied softly. "Be polite, okay?" Micah nodded. As they approached, Ruth stood. Her expression remained unreadable. Sarai greeted her first. "Mrs. Alaric." "Miss Jensen," Ruth returned. "Thank you for allowing this." Sarai nodded, saying nothing else. Desmond stepped in. "Micah, this is my friend Ruth. She brought snacks." Micah smiled shyly. "Hi." "Hello, Micah," Ruth said with surprising gentleness. "I've heard you like peanut butter cookies." Micah's face lit up. "Those are my favorite." Ruth opened the bag and handed him a small container. "I made them myself. My recipe is old but still works." He took the cookie with 2 hands, as if it were a delicate treasure. Thank you. Desmond and Sarai stood back as Micah sat beside Ruth on the bench, happily munching. Sarai leaned toward Desmond. You told her his favorite. I asked you last month when we were walking. You said peanut butter cookies. I remembered. Sarai blinked. You're learning. I'm trying, he said simply. For the next hour, Sarai watched from under the tree while Ruth and Micah talked about coloring, birds, and how tall giraffes really were. Ruth didn't push. She didn't pry. She didn't even try to hold him. She just listened, asked questions, laughed when Micah made jokes. And when it was time to go, she stood, handed him the rest of the cookies and said, "It was lovely meeting you." "You too." Micah grinned. "You're nice." Sarai's eyes flicked up sharply. Ruth gave a faint smile, then turned toward her. "Thank you again, Ms. Jensen." Sarai gave a single nod. "Take care." They walked away in separate directions. That night, Desmond sent a short message. She said she liked him, said she understands what she missed. "Thank you again." Sarai didn't reply. She wasn't angry. She wasn't moved. She was somewhere in between. But in the kitchen, as she packed away the cookies, she noticed Micah had written something on the lid with his crayon. "Nice Lady Ruth." And under it, he drew a lion wearing glasses. Sarai smiled. A little. The next morning, the house smelled like cinnamon and warm bread. Sarai stood barefoot in the kitchen, kneading dough for the week's rolls. The repetitive motion grounded her, fingers pressing, folding, turning. Something about working with her hands kept her mind from spinning too fast. Clara shuffled in wearing her house robe, mug in hand. "You're up early." "Didn't sleep well." Clara pulled out a chair. "The visit?" Clara took a slow sip, then set her mug down. "How was she?" "Surprisingly soft, not fake, not warm either, but respectful." "That's big," Clara said, "especially coming from Ruth Alaric." Sarai didn't speak for a moment. Then quietly, "Micah liked her." Clara studied her niece. "And you?" Sarai kept kneading. "I don't know yet." Later that day, while Micah played in the backyard with his dump truck, Sarai sat on the porch, watching the way his small body moved, sure and fast and free. She knew what it felt like to grow up always second-guessing yourself around people with money, power, and expectation. Ruth had once looked at her like she was decoration, presentable, temporary. But Micah didn't shrink. He made space where he went, and she wanted to protect that light with everything she had. That evening, Desmond called, not to ask anything, not to follow up, just to talk. "I'm taking a week off next month," he said, stepping away from the office. Sarai raised an eyebrow, phone on speaker, as she folded Micah's laundry. "You? Taking time off?" He chuckled. "I figured it's overdue." "You figured, or your therapist said so?" "Both." Sarai smiled into the laundry basket. "What'll you do?" "Spend time in Savannah. Just low-key, if that's okay." Sarai hesitated. "That depends on what you expect from it." "Nothing," he said softly. "Just time. With him. Around him. Whatever you allow." There was a long silence between them. Then Sarai said, "You're not the only one figuring things out, Desmond." "I know. I'm trying to." The next Saturday, Desmond returned with a small surprise for Micah, a build-your-own birdhouse kit. They sat together in the backyard, Micah in overalls and Sarai sipping tea under the tree. Desmond helped him with the wood glue and tiny nails, holding the pieces steady while Micah hammered. Sarai watched their teamwork quietly. "You're patient with him," she finally said. Desmond didn't look up. "He deserves that." She nodded. "He does." Micah turned the birdhouse over proudly. "It's crooked but cool." Desmond grinned. "That's how I describe myself too." Micah laughed. "You're not crooked. Give it time," Sarai muttered under her breath, smirking. Desmond caught it and laughed, deep and full. "That's fair." Later that afternoon, Sarai sat alone on the porch. Clara came out with 2 glasses of cold tea and sat beside her. "You trust him now?" Clara asked. Sarai leaned back. "I'm learning to—" "You love him still?" That question dropped like a pebble into still water. Sarai didn't answer right away. Clara waited. "I never stopped," Sarai whispered. "But I buried it. For years. I couldn't afford to feel it." Clara nodded slowly. "Love doesn't vanish. It gets buried, like roots. But eventually, it grows again if you let light in." "I'm not sure I want it to grow again." Clara gave her a side glance. "Why?" "Because it could fall apart again." Clara sipped her tea. "Or it could hold you both better this time." That evening, Sarai pulled a notebook from the kitchen drawer. Inside were letters she'd written to Micah over the years, one for every birthday. One after his first fever. One when she got the job at the community center. She flipped to a blank page and started writing a new one. "Micah, today I watched you trust someone without needing to be told you could. I watched a man try, not perfectly, not loudly, but gently. I want you to know that showing up matters, even if it comes late, even if it's scary, even if the world told you not to bother. And I hope one day you'll be the kind of man who doesn't run from hard things, but stands in them with love. Love always, Mama." That night, Desmond walked home instead of driving. He took the long way around the block, passing quiet homes with porch lights glowing. He didn't text her. He didn't press. He knew this was the part where he let things breathe. Not force, not ask. Just remain present. And he realized something then. This was no longer about earning forgiveness. This was about building something stronger than apology. It was about presence, consistency, and quiet repair. What happens when the person who left starts showing up again, quietly, consistently, and without asking for praise? Have you ever been in a position where you had to decide whether to open the door to someone from your past? Have you ever tried to rebuild something fragile with someone who once broke your trust? Sarai never asked for perfection. She asked for peace. And now, she's watching the man who once walked away return, not with promises, but presence. But is that enough? If this chapter made you think about trust, forgiveness, or second chances, let us know in the comments. Would you let someone like Desmond back in? For your child's sake? For love's sake? And if you're rooting for Sarai and Micah, hit the like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear this story. Micah sat on the floor with his shoes half-fastened, watching a video about space rockets on Sarai's tablet. He didn't notice Desmond standing quietly in the doorway, holding a small box in one hand and a paper bag in the other. "Morning," Sarai said, wiping her hands on a dish towel as she came from the kitchen. "Hey," Desmond replied. "I brought him something, if that's okay." Sarai glanced at the box. "What is it?" "A simple model rocket, the kind you build and paint. I remembered he was talking about them at the park." She didn't say no. He took that as a yes. Desmond knelt beside Micah, who looked up with a wide smile. "Mr. Des, hey, Space Cadet, I brought something cool." Micah tore open the box with the kind of excitement only kids could summon, wild and pure. "Whoa, you can build this?" "Yup. Together, if your mom says it's all right." Micah looked at her, hopeful. Sarai nodded. After breakfast, Micah cheered and tackled Desmond in a hug that knocked them both back on the rug. Desmond laughed, caught completely off guard. Sarai stood frozen in the doorway, her heart skipping a beat, not because the hug happened, but because of how natural it looked. Later that morning, the three of them sat outside on a blanket, spreading out the rocket parts. Micah held up a paintbrush. "I want it red and silver, like a real rocket." "You got it," Desmond said. As they painted and glued, Sarai handed Desmond a towel and said softly, "He's starting to ask questions. Real ones." Desmond looked up. "About me?" "Not directly. But he's wondering. He sees the difference now, between friends and family. He's not naive." Desmond set the paintbrush down. What do you want me to do? I don't know yet, she admitted. But you can't disappear again. If he gets attached and you pull back, it'll break him, not just confuse him. I won't leave, Desmond said, his voice steady. Not again. Sarai looked at him for a long moment. Don't say it if you don't mean it. He nodded. I mean it. Micah waved his brush in the air. You guys, look. Fire stripes. Sarai smiled, the tension dissolving for a moment. Desmond looked at Micah, then back at her. I'll wait, as long as it takes. But I'd like to tell him when you think the moment is right. That evening, Sarai sat on the couch with Clara, the silence between them comfortable. He's asking questions, Sarai said quietly. Clara nodded. You knew this would come. I don't know what to say. Say the truth, gently, age-appropriate. But don't lie. Sarai bit her lip. What if it changes how he sees me? Clara tilted her head. You raise that boy with love, stability, and joy. The truth doesn't undo that. It only deepens it. The next afternoon, Micah came in from the backyard. Grass stuck to his socks and a curious look on his face. Mama, yeah, baby. Why don't I have a dad like other kids? The room stilled. Sarai set her book down slowly. Come here. Micah crawled up onto the couch beside her, his small frame curling into her side. Remember how I told you some families look different? Some have one parent, some have two. Some have grandparents or aunties or people who love them in different ways. Micah nodded. Well, you were born with a mama who was ready, and a daddy who needed time. Is Mr. Des my daddy? The question dropped like a pin in a quiet room. Sarai didn't rush to answer. She looked him in the eyes. Do you want to know? Micah nodded. Yes, she said. He is. Micah blinked. But he wasn't here before. No, he wasn't. But not because of you, because he didn't know how to be ready. And now he's trying. Micah was quiet for a long time. Then, I'm not mad. I just didn't know. Sarai kissed his forehead. You always deserve to know. That evening, Desmond sat in the car outside Sarai's house, hands gripping the steering wheel. She had sent him a message 10 minutes earlier. He knows. He took it well. He might want to ask you something next time. Be ready to listen. Desmond exhaled slowly. He wasn't ready, but he would show up anyway. Micah waited on the porch steps, his little legs swinging as he stared out toward the road. The sun was still high, but the shadows were beginning to stretch, and Sarai could feel the weight in the air. Not tension, not fear, but something quieter, like expectation. She stepped outside with a juice box and handed it to him. Thanks, Mama, he said, barely looking up. You sure you're ready? Micah nodded. I think so. He didn't ask what to say. He didn't rehearse questions. He was just ready in his own way. That made Sarai more nervous than anything. Desmond pulled into the driveway 10 minutes later. No briefcase, no coat. Just him in a navy t-shirt and jeans, face unreadable, shoulders stiff. Sarai met him at the gate. He's on the porch, she said softly. Desmond paused. How is he? Calmer than me. Desmond gave a weak smile. Same. She didn't offer advice, didn't offer to stay close either. She stepped aside and let him go alone. Micah looked up as Desmond approached and scooted over to make space on the top step. Desmond sat down beside him slowly. Hey, buddy. Hi. A quiet pause. Then Micah asked, why didn't you come when I was born? Desmond looked straight ahead, eyes focused on the road. Because I didn't know how to be what you needed, and that wasn't your fault. That was mine. Micah sipped his juice box and nodded like he understood more than Desmond expected. Did you not want to be my daddy? Desmond turned to face him now, voice low. I didn't know how to be one. I thought I'd mess it up, so I stayed away. But that was wrong. Micah stared at his shoes. I missed a lot of your life, Desmond added. But I don't want to miss any more. Only if you want me around. Micah looked up. Are you going to leave again? No, Desmond said firmly. Not unless your mom tells me I need to. But if you want me here, I'll be here. Even if I have to sit way in the back." Micah was quiet for a long time. Then he leaned his head against Desmond's arm and said, "Okay." Desmond blinked. "Hard. Okay," he whispered back. Sarai watched from the window, her fingers pressed to the glass. She didn't cry, but something uncoiled in her chest, a tightness she hadn't realized she'd been holding for years. She stepped back, gave them space, and let the moment belong to them. That evening, Desmond stayed for dinner. "It wasn't planned," Micah asked. Sarai agreed. They sat at the table like a family that hadn't yet said the word, passing plates, laughing, about nothing, sharing buttered rolls and stories about birds that dive-bombed at the park. Afterward, Micah fell asleep on the couch halfway through a cartoon. Sarai pulled a blanket over him. Desmond stood beside her. "Thank you," he said. Sarai looked at him. "Don't thank me." He nodded slowly. "Then I'll just say this. I see the boy you raised, and I see how much love he's wrapped in. You gave him the best of you." Sarai whispered, "I had to." Desmond looked down. "You did it alone. I'm sorry for that." She didn't answer, not with words. But she didn't walk away either. Later that night, Desmond sat in his car for a long time before driving off. He wasn't thinking about himself anymore. He was thinking about Micah, how carefully he listened, how bravely he asked, how quickly he forgave, not with ease, but with choice. That kind of grace didn't come from blood. It came from being raised by someone who knew the value of truth. And Desmond promised himself, and silently Sarai, that he'd be the kind of man worthy of both of them. Desmond stood awkwardly near the edge of the picnic tables at the community fundraiser, hands stuffed in his pockets. He wasn't used to being this overlooked. At his tech firm, heads turned when he walked into a room. Here in Savannah, among school teachers, city workers, church folks, and parents who had known Sarai for years, he was just Micah's Mr. Des. And today, that title didn't hold much weight. Sarai was a featured speaker at the event, a short talk about community child care, support systems for single mothers, and the power of local collaboration. Desmond watched from the crowd, Micah sitting on his shoulders, juice box in hand. Sarai stood at the podium, voice calm, centered, glowing with the kind of confidence that came from experience, not applause. "We all need people who don't just show up in a crisis," she said. "We need those who stay through the mundane, the quiet, the slow. That's where children thrive. That's where trust is built." Desmond swallowed hard. She wasn't talking about him, not directly. But he felt it anyway. After the speech, people lined up to thank her. Desmond hung back, letting Micah chase a balloon and run laps around the field. An older woman in a floral scarf leaned in towards Sarai and whispered something. Sarai gave a tight smile but said nothing. Desmond noticed. A few minutes later, another woman, the PTA president from Micah's school, made a comment a little too loudly near the food table. "I'm just surprised she's letting him hang around." 5 years late and suddenly he's here. Like it's nothing. Desmond heard it. He didn't react. But Sarai did. She calmly walked over, handed the woman a plate of brownies and said, "People grow. If we don't give them space to show up better, we'll just keep standing in the past." Then she walked away. The woman blinked, cheeks flushed, silent. Later, while helping fold chairs at the end of the event, Desmond quietly said to Sarai, "You didn't have to defend me." "I wasn't defending you," she replied. "I was correcting ignorance." Desmond looked at her. "You're not the man you were," she said softly. "But people only remember what hurt looks like. They don't always recognize repair." Desmond nodded, humbled. "Still, thank you." She didn't answer, just handed him another chair. That night, after putting Micah to bed, Sarai stood on the porch, sipping mint tea, eyes on the stars. Clara joined her a few minutes later. "Town's buzzing," Clara said. "Everyone's talking about you." Sarai smirked. "They always do. They're watching to see what you do next." "I know." Clara tilted her head. "And what are you doing?" Sarai stared into the sky, letting him keep showing up. Micah's face was flushed with frustration, his fists balled at his sides as he stood in the corner of the living room. "I said I didn't want help," he shouted, tears springing to his eyes. Desmond stood just a few feet away, still holding the workbook. His voice had been too sharp, his tone too impatient. "I was only trying to explain it again," he said, softer this time. Micah wiped his face with the sleeve of his shirt, but he didn't move. Sarai entered from the kitchen, having heard the raised voices. "What happened?" she asked, her tone calm but alert. Desmond turned toward her, shame already rising in his chest. "I got frustrated. He wasn't listening. I raised my voice." Sarai looked at Micah, then back at Desmond. "He's 6. If it takes 10 tries to learn something, it takes 10 tries. Desmond nodded. "You're right." He crouched down to Micah's eye level, placing the workbook aside. "I'm sorry," he said gently. "You were right to tell me to stop. I didn't listen." Micah sniffed, but didn't speak. "I used a voice I shouldn't have. I let my stress talk instead of my heart. That's not your fault." Micah's eyes finally lifted. "Are you mad at me?" he asked in a whisper. Desmond shook his head. "No. I'm proud of you for speaking up. That's what brave kids do." Micah nodded, blinking fast. "Okay." Sarai stayed back, silent, watching, and impressed. Desmond didn't explain himself. He didn't redirect the blame. He apologized. Fully. Micah walked toward him and leaned into his chest. Desmond held him there, quiet and still. Later that evening, Sarai found Desmond sitting on the back steps, hands clasped loosely, gaze on the stars. "I wasn't ready for that," he said, without looking at her. "Parenting?" she asked, being told I was wrong, and knowing it was true. Sarai sat beside him. "You didn't handle it perfectly, but you didn't walk away from it either." Desmond nodded. "That's new for me." I noticed. Silence stretched between them, but this time it was comfortable. "I used to think leadership meant control," he said. "But today, a 6-year-old reminded me it means responsibility." Sarai looked at him. "He's learning you, and you're learning him." That's how families start, slowly, sometimes with bruised egos and botched math problems. They both chuckled lightly. Desmond exhaled. "Thanks for not tearing me down in front of him. I wanted to. I deserved it. But he needed to see us work through it. Together." Desmond looked at her then, eyes holding hers for a moment too long. Sarai looked away. "I should go," he said, standing slowly. "Drive safe," she murmured. Once his car disappeared down the street, Clara stepped onto the porch behind Sarai. "You looked calm." "I wasn't. You looked like a woman watching a man try again, without fear this time." Sarai didn't reply, but she didn't deny it either. Desmond sat in his driveway that night, fingers hovering over his phone. He wanted to say thank you, but somehow it didn't feel like enough. So instead he typed, "Today, I messed up. But today, I learned what it means to stay in the room when you do. I'll be better tomorrow, for him. And for me." He hit send, and for the first time, he believed it wasn't a promise. It was a decision. It started with an apology in the form of a box of glazed donuts. Desmond didn't text ahead. He just knocked at 8:15 a.m. on a Saturday, a white paper bag in one hand, and Micah's favorite dinosaur puzzle tucked under his arm. Sarai opened the door in her robe, one brow raised, curls pulled into a lazy bun. "I come bearing carbs," he said, lifting the bag like a peace flag. She sighed. "You're lucky Clara's not home." He stepped inside. She'd take my side after one bite. Micah came running at the sight of the puzzle. "You remembered." Desmond dropped to one knee. "Told you we'd finish it, right?" Sarai stepped back and let them pass. She didn't smile, but she didn't close the door either. The morning unfolded in quiet, unexpected harmony. Micah spread the puzzle across the coffee table. Desmond helped, patient and soft-spoken. No corrections, no sighs, just presence. Sarai poured coffee for herself, then, hesitating, poured a second cup and placed it beside Desmond. "Thanks," he said. No teasing, no assumptions, just gratitude. "You used to drink it black," she said. He paused. "Still do. I sweetened it." He sipped. "That's fine. You still like cinnamon?" She looked up. Yeah. The air shifted. Slight. Subtle. Like muscle memory of what used to be. After the puzzle was finished, Micah insisted on an impromptu dance session. He dragged Desmond by the hand to the living room and blasted music on the Bluetooth speaker. Sarai leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching as Micah tried to teach his father the wobble. Desmond was terrible at it, and he knew it. But he laughed. Hard. Micah was red in the face from joy. "You look like a giraffe." Desmond clutched his chest. "I'm hurt. You need to learn rhythm, Dad." Sarai laughed, and immediately caught herself. Too late. Desmond saw it. Their eyes met, not for long, but long enough. By noon, they were hungry. "I'll make grilled cheese," Sarai offered, tying her robe tighter. Desmond surprised her. "I'll help." "You cook?" "I boil and microwave. But I'm great at slicing tomatoes." She let him stay. He didn't hover. Just followed her instructions. Cut what she handed him. Cleaned as they worked. When she reached for the pan above the fridge, he automatically moved to get it for her, just like old times. Sarai paused. He noticed. "Habit," he said. You look comfortable." She turned to him, arms folded. "I am. In my home, with my son." The reminder was intentional, but she didn't say it with bitterness. Only truth. He nodded. "I respect that." They ate at the kitchen island. Micah between them. Desmond took a bite, eyes widening. "This tastes better than I remember." "You remember?" "I remember everything," he said, not looking at her. Sarai didn't respond, but her hand trembled slightly when she picked up her glass. After lunch, Clara returned, and froze when she saw Desmond seated comfortably at the table. "I see world peace broke out," she muttered, dropping her keys. Sarai rolled her eyes. "He brought donuts." Clara raised a brow. Bribery always works." Micah ran over. "Aunt Clara, we danced." "Oh, I missed a show?" "Dad was terrible." Desmond groaned. "He's not lying." Clara watched them with narrowed eyes, then turned to Sarai. "You okay?" Sarai nodded. "It's just a quiet Saturday." Clara smirked. "It won't stay quiet for long." That evening, Desmond stood at the door, coat in hand. "Thanks for today," he said. Sarai nodded. Micah needed it. He hesitated. "What about you?" She met his gaze. "I'm not sure what I need." Honest, clear, neutral. "I'd like to do this again," he said. "Spend time, with him, with you, when you're comfortable." She didn't reply, but she didn't shut the door either. And when he walked away, she watched, for a little longer than usual. That night, Sarai couldn't sleep. The couch still held the warmth from where Desmond had sat. The kitchen still smelled like grilled cheese, and somewhere deep inside her chest, something felt unsteady, not unsafe, not romantic, just unfamiliar. It had been years since she saw him laugh like that, since Micah looked up at a man with such brightness in his eyes, since she didn't flinch at the sound of his voice. She closed her bedroom door and leaned against it. The soft hum of the fridge filled the silence. Clara knocked lightly. "You good?" she asked, holding a blanket in one hand. Sarai nodded. "It was just nice." Clara's look softened. "And that scares you?" Sarai blinked. "Yeah." Across town, Desmond sat in his car outside a small diner. The street was quiet. No suits, no photographers, no event managers. Just the soft glow of neon signs and the crinkle of wax paper from a burger he barely touched. His phone buzzed. It was his therapist. Weekly check-in reminder. What are you feeling right now? He stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Then typed, I felt like I was home, but I know I don't live there anymore. I don't want to mistake warmth for welcome. He didn't send it. He didn't delete it either. He just stared. Then finally whispered, don't mess this up. Sarai woke up the next morning to a knock. Not on the door. On her heart. She sat at the edge of her bed, replaying yesterday. Micah's laughter, Desmond's patience, her own softness. Was it weakness? Or was it grace? She pulled on jeans and a sweatshirt, made her way to the porch with a cup of coffee, and let the wind kiss her cheeks. Micah came out, rubbing his eyes. Is Dad coming today? She hesitated. I don't think so. Why not? He was here yesterday, but he didn't say goodbye to me. Sarai smiled softly. He didn't want to wake you. Micah looked up at her. I like it when he stays. She nodded, pulling him into her lap. I know, baby. Later that day, Sarai got a text. From Desmond. Would you be okay with Micah coming with me next Saturday? Just the afternoon. I'll take him to the aquarium. She didn't reply right away. Not because she didn't want to, but because it scared her how normal it felt. How right. She walked over to Clara, who was folding laundry. Desmond wants to take Micah out next weekend. Clara paused. Alone? Yeah. You okay with that? I don't know, Sarai said honestly. But I think Micah is... Clara nodded. Then, maybe it's time. That week, Desmond showed up early. Too early. He waited in the car, not wanting to ring the bell and seem overeager. But Sarai saw him from the window, sipping a bottle of water and scrolling through something on his phone. He'd lost weight, dressed simpler now, less polished, more grounded. She opened the door before he knocked. He's still getting dressed, she said. Desmond stood. No rush. Sarai stepped aside. He followed, quiet, respectful. Micah came running, backpack on, shoes untied. Ready? Sarai laughed. Boy, slow down. Desmond crouched. You sure you want to hang with me today? Micah grinned. Yes. Desmond ruffled his hair, then looked up at Sarai. I'll text updates. She nodded. Thank you. They headed out, and for the first time in a long time, Sarai didn't feel the need to follow them. At the aquarium, Desmond didn't try to be perfect. He just listened. He let Micah explain jellyfish, even when he got the facts wrong. He let him linger at the penguin tank for 20 minutes. He didn't check his phone once. They sat on a bench eating soft pretzels, Micah leaning on his side. You ever get scared? Micah asked suddenly. Desmond looked down. Scared of what? That Mom won't like you again. Desmond froze. Yeah, I get scared of that. Micah nodded. She gets quiet when she's sad. Desmond placed a hand on his son's back. I used to make her sad a lot. Micah blinked up. Are you gonna stop? Desmond's throat tightened. I'm trying. Every day. Micah smiled. Okay. Back at home, Sarai paced. Not because she feared Desmond would do anything wrong, but because she feared she might start wanting him again. Not the old him, this new one. The quiet, the kindness, the small gestures. She'd spent so long building a life without him, she wasn't sure how to open the door again without losing herself in the process. The doorbell rang. Micah ran in, holding a glowing souvenir. Mom, we saw sharks. Desmond stood behind him, shoulders relaxed, lips curved. I hope it was okay, he said. It was more than okay, Sarai replied. Desmond's eyes met hers. May I speak to you? Alone? Sarai glanced at Clara, who took Micah by the hand and disappeared down the hall. She folded her arms. Okay. In the kitchen, Desmond stood silent for a beat. I know I'm not owed anything, he began. Not your trust. Not your love. Not even space in your life. Sarai didn't interrupt. I came today because I wanted to show Micah something, that I can show up, not just drop in. You did, she said. He looked at her, hopeful. I also wanted to ask if we could talk again. Not about the past, but maybe about the future. I'm not offering myself, he added. I'm offering honesty and patience. She blinked. He continued, softer. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it, but I'll be here, quietly, consistently. Sarai didn't answer immediately, but she didn't say no. She simply opened the back door and said, walk with me. And he did, step by slow, quiet step. Sarai didn't expect the knock, not that morning, not with her hair still in a wrap, and Micah half-dressed with cereal dust on his shirt. She opened the door slowly, expecting the mailman. It was Kayla, her older sister, and, behind her, stood their mother. Both women wore the same look, tight smiles wrapped around unspoken tension. Sarai blinked. What's going on? We were in town, her mother said, stepping in without being invited. Thought we'd visit. Sarai moved aside, lips pressed. You've never just visited. Kayla shrugged, eyes scanning the apartment. Looks cozy. Sarai closed the door. What do you want? Her mother set her purse on the dining table. To talk. Micah ran out. Grandma. He rushed into her arms and she held him tightly. Sarai's stomach turned. Not at the love, but at the timing. Kayla crouched down beside him. You've gotten big, champ. Micah nodded proudly. Dad took me to see sharks. That stopped everything. Their mother straightened slowly. Desmond? Kayla's brows shot up. He's back? Sarai stood her ground. Yes. He's in Micah's life now. Her mother's mouth thinned. Is that smart? Sarai crossed her arms. It's not your call. Kayla glanced between them. We're just surprised. No, you're judging, Sarai replied. And I didn't ask for either. They sat in the living room. Micah went to play in his room with his tablet. Sarai didn't offer coffee. Her mother finally spoke. We're not here to fight. We heard things. About Desmond. About your life. Sarai raised an eyebrow. Heard from who? Kayla hesitated. One of Mom's friends said she saw you two together. Smiling. So, you've changed, her mother added. And we're worried. Sarai laughed, but it had no humor. Because I'm healing? Because you're getting soft again. That hit harder than she wanted to admit. Her mother's voice stayed sharp. That man left you humiliated, pregnant, alone, and now he gets to waltz back in? Sarai stared at her. He doesn't get to waltz, she said. He walks slow now. With guilt. With grace. With Micah. Her mother sighed. Don't let him back in out of loneliness. Sarai rose. I'm not lonely. I'm finally whole. And if you came to shame me for my choices, you can leave. Kayla stood. You're defensive. No, I'm protecting peace. Her mother didn't move. Micah deserves better than confusion, she said. Sarai stepped closer. He deserves truth, and he deserves to decide just like I do. They left minutes later. No hugs, no apologies, just silence hanging behind the door. That evening, Clara came in through the back door, holding groceries. Sarai was still rattled. Clara placed the bags down and gave her a look. Who stirred your pot today? My mother and sister. Clara rolled her eyes. Did they come with love or poison? Both, wrapped in pearls and judgment. Clara sat beside her. What did they say? That I'm soft, that I'm risking everything. Clara scoffed. They didn't raise your son. They didn't sit up those nights when you cried over bills and formula. They don't get to measure your strength. Sarai exhaled. I didn't expect it to still sting, she admitted. Clara's voice softened. Because you still care. Sarai looked at her. Is it weakness to care? No, Clara said. It's only weakness if you care more about their opinion than your own truth. Later that week, Desmond showed up with Micah after school. They'd stopped for ice cream. Micah was talking a mile a minute, showing off a new drawing. Desmond waited at the door, hesitant to enter. Sarai motioned him in. Micah went straight to the fridge to hang his artwork with a magnet. "Nice piece," Clara said, walking by. "You're getting better." Desmond cleared his throat. "Can I talk to you?" Sarai nodded. They stepped out onto the porch. He leaned against the rail, hands in his pockets. "I heard your mom and sister came by." Sarai arched a brow. "From who?" "I was at the same coffee shop. Kayla walked in, didn't see me. I overheard her venting." Sarai winced. "That explains the glare." "I don't care what they think," he said. "But I care how it affected you." She stayed quiet. "I'm not here to take back time. I'm here to make this time count." Sarai looked up at him. "You don't have to defend me," she said. "I'm not," Desmond replied. "I'm trying to earn you." Every single step. As night fell, Sarai stepped into Micah's room to tuck him in. He was already drifting, hand curled around a stuffed dinosaur. She sat at the edge of his bed. He mumbled, "Are you and Dad gonna live together again?" Her breath caught. "Why do you ask that?" He opened his eyes just a little. "Because I like it when we're all in one place." Sarai stroked his curls. "Sometimes, baby, grown-ups need to learn how to be okay by themselves before they're good together." Micah yawned. "But if you're good now, can you be together now?" Sarai smiled, eyes stinging. "We're working on it." And maybe they were. The next Saturday, Sarai stood in front of the mirror, smoothing the sleeves of her cream blouse. Her hands lingered at the collar. Simple, clean, no jewelry, just small studs and clear gloss on her lips. It wasn't a date. It was the meeting. Desmond had asked her to come with Micah to a small community event his company sponsored. A wellness initiative with food trucks, children's activities, and a speech. He had to give about rebuilding equity in neighborhoods like theirs. Sarai had hesitated for days, but in the end she said yes, not because of romance, but because she wanted to see Desmond in his world, the one he was building now, the one that would eventually shape Micah's future too. Clara peeked into her room. "You look like a CEO's dream and a single mom's reality all at once." Sarai smirked. "That's oddly specific. It's honest, and I'm proud of you." They hugged, and Clara whispered, "Go with your eyes open, and your heart half cracked." Outside, Desmond waited in the car, freshly shaved, navy button-down open at the collar, no tie. When Sarai and Micah came out, his smile was soft, respectful. "You look beautiful," he said. Sarai offered a polite nod. "Thanks." Micah scrambled into the back seat, excited for bouncy castles and snow cones. As they drove, silence danced between the front seats. "I appreciate you coming," Desmond said. Sarai glanced out the window. "Let's just focus on the day." At the event, Desmond moved through the crowd like a man with purpose. He introduced Sarai to vendors, board members, and neighborhood leaders, always as Micah's mother with a tone that carried quiet pride. When they reached the shaded tent for VIPs, Desmond pulled out a chair for her. Sarai looked at him. He didn't wink, didn't push, just waited. And that restraint spoke louder than any apology he could have offered. Micah was already off with other kids. Sarai sipped lemonade, watching Desmond work the crowd, shaking hands and nodding thoughtfully during every conversation. A woman in a burgundy pantsuit walked up to her. "Hi, you must be Sarai." She blinked. "Yes." "And you are?" "Rochelle. I work on Desmond's advisory board. He talks about you often." That surprised her. "He does?" Rochelle smiled warmly. "He's different now. Calmer, grounded. I don't know what happened between you two, but I'm glad he has someone like you in his life. It's made him a better man." Sarai didn't respond right away, because deep down, she already knew. Minutes later, the MC called Desmond to the stage. He adjusted the mic and paused. His eyes scanned the crowd, and when they found Sarai, he didn't look away. "I used to think success was measured in buildings, contracts, and numbers," he began. "But lately, I've realized it's also measured in second chances." He went on to talk about community, resilience, and personal growth. And without saying her name, he said everything that mattered. After the applause, Sarai excused herself to get some air. She walked toward the garden trail beside the park, needing a moment. Desmond caught up with her minutes later. "I didn't mean to put you on the spot," he said softly. "You didn't," Sarai replied, eyes on the flower beds. "I'm just processing." He stepped closer. "I meant every word, especially the part about second chances." She finally turned to face him. "What do you want, Desmond?" "Honesty?" he asked. "Always. I want to be a real father to Micah. I want to rebuild the trust I broke with you. And I want a shot, a real shot, at our family." Sarai searched his face. "Why now?" "Because I finally stopped lying to myself," he said, "about what matters. About who I am when I'm not trying to be impressive, just present." The wind shifted. Trees whispered. Sarai looked away. "I don't know if I can go back." "I don't want you to," Desmond said. "I want us to go forward." Later that night, back home, Sarai tucked Micah in again. His ice cream-stained shirt lay in the laundry bin. His new drawing was already taped beside the last one. Clara was waiting at the table. "So?" Sarai sat down across from her. He didn't push. He didn't charm. He showed up. Clara nodded slowly. "And you?" Sarai bit her lip. "I felt seen. Like the woman I became while raising Micah mattered to him. You're not the same girl he left." "No," Sarai whispered. "And maybe that's why we have a chance." That night, as she lay in bed, her phone buzzed. A message from Desmond. "Thank you for today, for trusting me enough to stand beside me. Sleep well, Sarai. I'll keep showing up, even if you don't open the door every time." She didn't reply, but she smiled, and for the first time in years, her dreams didn't end in goodbye. The next week moved slowly, like air thick with waiting. Sarai hadn't seen Desmond since the event. No calls, no unexpected drop-bys. Just the text that still lingered on her screen. Unread, but not ignored. "I'll keep showing up, even if you don't open the door every time." He hadn't sent another, and that silence was loud. Clara had left town for a wellness retreat she booked months ago. Micah was spending the weekend at a day camp hosted by their church. For the first time in years, Sarai had her apartment to herself. She thought it would feel peaceful. Instead, it felt like standing at the edge of something, not knowing whether to leap or walk away. By noon Saturday, she found herself cleaning obsessively, folding dish towels, reorganizing spice jars, wiping down already spotless counters. Her thoughts circled the same question. What if he meant it? What if it's different now? But then the counter voice came. And what if he breaks you again? What if he fades like before, when the feelings are no longer shiny? The doorbell rang. She froze, not expecting anyone. When she opened it, Desmond stood on the porch, not in a suit, not in slacks, but jeans and a dark t-shirt. In his hand, a small, worn photo album. Her heart pulled tight. "Can I come in?" he asked, voice low. She stepped aside without a word. They sat on the couch in the same silence that used to separate them. But now, it felt different. Heavy, yes, but shared. He opened the photo album, laid it on the coffee table between them. "I found this last week," he said, "at my mother's place. She'd kept it. I didn't know." Sarai leaned forward slowly. Inside were photos she hadn't seen in years. Her ultrasound image, a printed sonogram photo labeled baby, 12 weeks, hospital discharge papers, a newborn picture. Sarai blinked hard. She had all this? "She did," Desmond replied. "She said she kept it, in case I ever grew up enough to come looking." Sarai swallowed. "Did you?" He looked at her. "I'm looking now." A long silence passed. Desmond tapped the edge of the album. "I'm not here to beg. I've done that already. I'm not even here to convince you to love me again. I came because you need to know something." Sarai braced herself. "My father left us when I was 10, Desmond began. He had 2 other kids in another city. My mother raised me to believe men couldn't be trusted, that they disappear, that they break you and leave you to clean up. He paused. I didn't want to become him. So I overcorrected. I built walls, career, money, control, and when I found out you were pregnant, I thought I was protecting myself from becoming a man like him. Sarai whispered, but you became him anyway. He nodded. I know. The rawness in his voice made her chest ache. I don't expect your forgiveness. But I need you to see the version of me that finally stopped hiding. He stood, slowly. I've bought a house, Sarai. Not a mansion, a home. One with a backyard and room for a little boy to grow. I signed the documents to add Micah's name to my estate plan. No conditions, no contracts. Just love. Sarai covered her mouth, tears rising. I've also scheduled a therapy program for fatherhood support. Because I need to do the work, not just promise change. He walked to the door, then turned. I'll be at Memorial Park tomorrow at 3 p.m. I'll bring Micah his new science kit like I promised. You don't have to come, but if you do, I'll be there. And then he left. No pressure, no dramatic exit. Just a quiet man, stepping into his consequences. Sarai stared at the door long after it clicked shut. Later that evening, she stood in Micah's room, picked up his favorite drawing, the one where he drew Mum, me, and Dee. Stick figures, yes, but 3 of them, holding hands. She didn't know how to raise a son who saw his father in flashes, who built love from weekends and toys. She wanted more for him, but also she wanted safety. She stood in the kitchen hours later, flipping through the album Desmond left behind. A folded note slipped out from the last page. It was in Sarai's handwriting, from a journal she kept during pregnancy. If he ever comes back, I hope he comes as a man who doesn't need forgiveness to be a good father. She gasped. She hadn't remembered writing it, but she meant it then. And maybe still meant it now. She slid the album shut and walked to her bedroom. Tomorrow, everything could change. Or stay the same. But for the first time in years, the choice was hers. The air in Memorial Park carried that late afternoon hush. Families scattered across picnic blankets, the hum of weekend music drifting from a nearby bandstand. Children chased bubbles near the lake. Sarai held Micah's hand tightly as they walked toward the oak tree by the playground. Her heart beat unevenly. She hadn't told Micah they were coming to meet Desmond. She just said they were going to the park, like they always did. Micah spotted the tall figure first. Mummy, look, it's the man from the museum. Sarai stopped. Desmond sat on the grass with a large science kit beside him. No tie, no arrogance, just jeans, sneakers, and a look in his eyes that said he hoped, but didn't assume. Micah tugged her hand. Can I go see? She nodded. Go ahead, baby. He ran, full of ease, no hesitation. Sarai followed slowly, giving them a moment. Hey, scientist, Desmond greeted warmly. Think we can build a volcano today? Micah's eyes widened. For real? Absolutely. But only if your mum says it's okay. Micah turned to her. Please, Mummy, just for a little. She nodded again, soft smile forming. Sure. They sat together in the grass. Desmond carefully opened the box, letting Micah explore each piece. For 30 minutes, the 2 of them laughed, poured, and mixed as foam erupted from their makeshift volcano. Sarai watched, still seated a few feet away. But her heart had moved closer. At one point, Desmond looked over. Want to join us? She hesitated, then got up and settled beside them. The 3 of them built the second project together, a solar system mobile. Micah painted Saturn's rings with an orange streak that ended up on his nose. Sarai laughed. Desmond handed her a napkin. Their fingers brushed. It was small, but it felt like something. Later, when Micah went off to play on the jungle gym, Desmond turned to her. I don't know what this means, he said quietly, but I do know what I want. Sarai looked at him. What do you want? I want to be here, he said. Not just for weekends or birthdays. I want to be a dad. I want to carry this with you. Her eyes shimmered. "And when it gets hard, I'll still be here." A pause. "And what about us?" she asked. He took a breath. "I want to earn the chance to be more than Micah's father, but only if you want that too. Only if it doesn't cost you your peace." Tears welled. "You were my first heartbreak, Desmond, but you're also the first man who's ever tried to come back without forcing me to prove I'm worth staying for." "I'm not here to prove I've changed," he said. "I'm here to build something new, with the truth this time." Micah came running back, a plastic dinosaur in hand. "Look, it roars." Sarai smiled through tears, brushing his curls from his face. Desmond stood. "Micah, can I ask you something?" "Yeah? Would it be okay if I visited more often? Maybe even helped you with school projects?" Micah nodded shyly. "Yeah, I think that'd be cool." Desmond looked at Sarai, eyes asking her the same thing. She exhaled. "We can try. Not a promise, but a beginning." As the sun lowered behind the trees, casting a soft orange glow across the grass, Sarai felt something loosen in her chest, a weight she'd carried alone for too long. They walked back to the car together. Micah held both their hands. At her car, Sarai turned to Desmond. "No rush, no pressure. But you should know, Micah likes pancakes on Saturdays." He smiled. "I make a mean blueberry stack. We'll see." She opened the door, helped Micah buckle in. Before she got in, Desmond leaned close. "Thank you. For today." She met his eyes. "Thank you for not making me fight to be heard." They drove off, and Desmond stood there, hand in his pocket, watching them go. Not because he was waiting for a miracle, but because he was finally ready to do the work for one. 6 months later, Micah's birthday was held at a small community center filled with balloons, laughter, and too many cupcakes. Desmond helped blow up balloons. Clara baked her famous red velvet. Sarai coordinated everything with color-coded notes like she always did. Desmond showed up every Saturday, sometimes Sunday too, not with gifts, but with time, questions, listening. He never moved in, but he moved closer to fatherhood, to friendship, to something like love again. And one morning, as Sarai poured coffee, Desmond kissed her forehead. No expectation in it, just tenderness. She smiled. Healing was never loud. It was quiet, like love that had finally learned to stay. Before you go, have you ever forgiven someone who shattered your heart, or let someone back in after years of silence? If Sarai's story moved you, if you believe in second chances, quiet healing, and love that chooses to stay, then let us hear your voice. Drop a comment. Tell us what part of her journey spoke to you. Like this video if you felt the weight of her choices. Subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories, because we tell the kind of stories that remind you, love doesn't always knock twice, but when it does, be ready to open the door. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next story.